those who have Chokhmah, they're the eyes of the community. So in this case, we're saying that the eyes are related to Chokhmah. When it says that Hashem has his eyes on the land, it means Chokhmah. And what is Chokhmah? Chokhmah is the source of light. We know there are 10 spheres. Chokhmah is the first of the 10, and it's the source of all 10. And every year, we finished yesterday by the bottom of the page. In the booklet, it's 44b, but in the Tanya, it's page 217. And it says that every year there's a new light of Chokhmah that shines in the world, which means Hashem is infinite. So even when we talk about Chokhmah, there are infinite layers of depth in Chokhmah. And every year there's a new light that shines, but the new light is not just new, it's also deeper and higher than the light that was there last year. Like I mentioned yesterday, this is irrelevant to what we saw happening in the world. Let's say one year was a better year, one year was unfortunately a worse year. It doesn't mean this year there was a different light. No matter what happens down here, there's a newer, deeper, greater light that shines. The fact that down here, Chas v'shalom, things worked out in a different way, means that it wasn't revealed, the goodness and the greatness of this light wasn't revealed because of one reason or another, but it shines. And what will determine and what does it depend on about revealing it? So that has to do with us through our avodah, whatever we do. So let's look further, next page. Again, 44c in the booklet, and it's page 218 in the Tanya. Ki now the Rebbe describes what happens. Kol shana v'shana, the light of Hashem that shines in the world every year. When it comes to the end of the year, mistalik l'sharshay, that light is withdrawn from the world, goes back to its original source, goes back into its source, which is Hashem. And when does that happen? B'chol erev Rosh Hashana, on erev Rosh Hashana. Yishachedish miskasa, when the moon is covered. In other words, the moon is really a physical manifestation of the sphere of Malchus, and the fact that the light of the moon gets diminished and diminished and diminished and diminished until you don't even see it is because Erev Rosh Hashana, on that day, all the energy and all the light of Hashem that was spent from Hashem, invested in the universe throughout the whole year, goes back to its source within Hashem, and a new light comes out. In some places, this is compared to sleeping, but let's wait a minute till we get there. And then, through the blowing of the shofar, and through our prayers, that's when the new light, and that's how the new light, which is superior, is drawn into the world. And again, it's coming from Pchina Elyona Yosef, from a much higher level, Sheba Madreges Chochmei, a deeper, higher dimension and a deeper layer of depth in Hashem's Chochmah. And that light shines on the world. First of all, it shines on the higher worlds, and then it shines in all the worlds, and eventually from there, it shines down here on each and every one of us. The Hainu, this means, page 219, Min ha'er ein sabar chachmos ha'malubish ba, k'liksiv, ki imcha mekir chayim ba'ercha nir. It says, with you is the source of light, in your light shall we see light. In other words, Hashem's light is also the source of life. So this light that shines on Rosh Hashana is the source of life for everything in the universe, everything. This is the light that shines from Chochmei Elah, and that is Mekor HaChaim, is the source of all life. So again, in a sense, I started to say this is compared to a person sleeping. When a person is up all day, and you're up from the morning till at night, you probably heard about this, that some people at night get a little bit tired. Of course they're tired. They spent all that energy throughout the whole day. And they're up from the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning. Now it's 9, 10 o'clock at night. They're tired. If by 10 o'clock at night they're tired, by tomorrow morning they should be drained completely. It's another 7, 8 hours later. You see, a strange thing happens in the morning. You wake up in the morning, hopefully, and you feel refreshed. You have your energy back. What happened? Again, this is the way Hasidus explains it, that at night when a person goes to sleep, all the energy that was spent through the day, when we go to sleep, it goes back into its source, in the soul. And in the morning, new energy comes out, and that's why we feel refreshed. And this is a cycle that repeats itself every single day. On a more sort of global level or universal level, this is what happens to the world. Hashem's light and Hashem's energy is spent and gives life to everything in the universe 354 days a year or more. At the end of the year, exactly on the last day of the year, the world goes to sleep, and all the energy goes back to its source. And that's why we see the moon, the light is diminished. On Rosh Hashana, when we blow the shofar and we do the davening and all the different customs that we're meant to do, spiritually, based on Kabbalah and everything else, what's meant to happen, what is it meant to accomplish? To bring a new light into the world, there's going to be the new source of light for the universe. Now, one of the things which we spoke about right in the beginning, the first class we gave, is the fact that Hasidus explains whatever happens on a yontif spiritually, this is what happened the first time that the yontif came about. And every year it reoccurs on some sort of spiritual level. Remember, it's not that we have Haman again and we have Esther and Mordechai. They lived a little bit over 2,000 years ago. But whatever happened spiritually then, which was the source of the miracles, that spiritual light shines once again on Purim and so on. So if we're saying that this is what happens on Rosh Hashana, this must be what also happened the first Rosh Hashana. So where do we find this? So we find this, what happened on the first day the world was created? What was the major event that took place on that day? It's in the Chumash. What? Light and darkness. No. When is Rosh Hashanah? Is it the first day of creation or is it the sixth day of creation?
Oh, sorry.
What? The sixth. That's why we celebrate on the first day of Tishrei, because the world was actually created what would be now the 25th of Elul. The world was created 6 days before. We celebrate not the day the actual world was created, we celebrate the day that Adam was created. And that's a subject in itself, why? But the general idea is because the whole world was created for that purpose. So in a sense, the creation is identified with the creation of man, not the creation of just the universe. So that first day that Adam came into being, the biggest event that happened on that day is that Chava was created, his wife. How did that happen? Hashem put Adam to sleep, and he took out a part of Adam, and from that part he created another human being, which was Chava. And what happened after that? Now that there was male and female, they can have children. And that was the source and the basis for the fact that there are all the billions of generations that came from Adam and Chava to this day and to all of eternity. So in a sense, if we analyze what happened on that first day was Hashem took Adam and put him to sleep. But as a result of that, something new came into being. And that newness, which was Chava, that enabled something to happen which could never have happened before. And that's, in a sense, the model of what happens every Rosh Hashanah. The light that was here last year goes back to sleep, means it goes back up to its source. And on Rosh Hashanah, it comes back, the new light comes down, and that's the source of all the new life and sustenance that Hashem gives to every single detail in the universe. And this repeats itself every year. In fact, on a smaller scale, you wanted to say something? No. On a smaller scale, this happens every week on Shabbos, which means that's what happens on Shabbos. That we say Shabbos, Hashem rests. He rests. What he lays down on a couch, or he goes actually into a bed. How does he rest? Obviously, it's a spiritual something, and we describe it as resting. So in Chassidus and Kabbalah, it's explained the same thing. That the weekdays, that's when Hashem created the world. Hashem is sort of in a creative mode. His light and his energy is being spent and being exerted, and he's creating heaven and earth, and creates the light, and creates land, and creates humans, animals. On Friday, all that energy at the end of the week goes back to its source. And on Shabbos, the new light and the new energy for the new week comes drawn down. So in a sense, Friday and Shabbos is the similar, what happens spiritually is similar to what happens on Rosh Hashana, but on a smaller scale. It's only for the week. The light and energy that's supposed to be in effect this week. On Rosh Hashanah is the light and energy that's going to be in effect for the whole year. In fact, this is the reason why there's certain tzaddikim who conducted themselves according to Kabbalah, that Friday, late afternoon, close to Shabbos, they would take a short nap. Why would they take a short nap? Because being that in the heavenly realm, it's a time of sleep. Therefore, down here, they also went to sleep to enact and to express what's going on in the spiritual realm. But there's also a difference. What do I mean by a difference? Difference how it's done. It says that the Alter Rebbe would actually fall asleep. Like, not on his own, just would fall asleep, not go to sleep, he would fall asleep a few moments before Shabbos. Why? Because he was so in touch. He was the vehicle for what's going on up there, that being that up there was a time of sleep, that's why he fell asleep. And the Hasidim point out, once heard it from the Rebbe also, this is the difference between the Alter Rebbe and Rabbi Hillel Parasha. There was a very big chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek. He was a chassid of the Mittul Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek. His name is Rabbi Hillel Parasha. He was, first of all, the brilliant chassid. They say that at the age of Bar Mitzvah, he knew, had such vast knowledge of Torah, there wasn't a Torah book printed in his time that he didn't know. Age of Bar Mitzvah. And he was a chassid of another Rebbe, called Ramatov Chernobyler, Ramatov Chernobyl. And he found out about the Alter Rebbe, he found about Chassidus Chabad, and got very excited. And he was considering becoming a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. But he thought before he becomes a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, he'd first want to see if the Alter Rebbe is really that giant of a genius in Torah, as people say about him, because he was a Torah genius. And he would, I guess he couldn't see himself submitting himself to someone unless they were also a great Torah genius. So he had a question that no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't find the answer. Whoever he spoke to, the greatest geniuses of Torah, didn't have an answer. And he thought he'll ask the Alter Rebbe this question. I don't know what the question was, but we know in reference to what it was. One of the tractates of the Talmud is called Erchen. Erchen means evaluations. Not long ago, we had a parsha where it says if a person says that I'm donating my value to the Beis Hamikdash, how much money they have to give? Depends on the age, depends on the man, depends on the woman, depends on the child. So the whole Gemara is called evaluations. It's supposed to be a complicated Gemara, and he had a very complicated question, and he decided he's going to go to the Alter Rebbe. He traveled because he heard the Alter Rebbe is coming to a certain town. When he got there, the Alter Rebbe left. Okay. He said, I'll find out where he's going next. Then he found out he's going to another town, so he went to that town. Hey, we'll wait for another opportunity. The opportunity came, he heard the Alter Rebbe is coming someplace. Wherever he went, by the time he got there, the Alter Rebbe was gone. So he thought of an idea. But once he hears the Alter Rebbe is coming someplace, he'll get there before the Alter Rebbe, find out the exact time, and he'll definitely won't miss him. And that's what he did. Being that he wasn't a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, and he was a chassid of another Rebbe, he didn't want to really come out in the open. And therefore, what he did was he was hiding under a bench, waiting to hear the Alter Rebbe speak. And after he finishes, he would come out, and then he'd approach him. He's under the bench, and he hears the Alter Rebbe says that the young man has questions about evaluation. Let him first evaluate himself before he's evaluating others. He heard these words. He knew the Alter Rebbe was talking about him, and he fainted. I guess eventually they found him there and revived him. The end of the story was he never got to see the Alter Rebbe. But he did become a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, his son, successor, the Mitzvah Rebbe and Tzemach Tzedek. So he was someone who conducted himself according to Kabbalah. And this is what the Chassidim say. What was the difference between him and the Alter Rebbe? He would go to sleep. The Alter Rebbe would fall asleep. You realize the difference. Go to sleep means that being that up there it's a time of sleep, I will also do that. The Alter Rebbe just fell asleep because he was so connected. It's like a mirror. The mirror doesn't make a choice to follow what you're doing. If you're waving your hands, therefore automatically the mirror, which is a reflection of you, will wave his hands. So the Alter Rebbe was a reflection of what he was so connected to what's going on in the heavenly realm that he sort of fell asleep. And the same is, they say about the Baal Shem Tov, before Rosh Hashana, they would saw him that fall asleep briefly, because this was a reflection of what's going on in the spiritual realm. So we have this in the parentheses, as it's known to those that are the scholars of hidden wisdom, which is Kabbalah, that b'chol Rosh Hashana, every Rosh Hashana, he had Nasira. There's something called Nasira that takes place. And specifically, this occurs with the sphere of Malchus. That's why we see with the moon that Erev Rosh Hashanah the light is gone, and then it's refreshed. And from Rosh Hashanah is the birth of the new moon, and so on. And by the way, is the only yontif that is on the day of Rosh where there is no moon. Pesach is the 15th of the month. Sukkot is the 15th of the month. Shavuos is not the 15th, but it's still the 6th or the 7th, where there's already the moon is shining. Of course, the other Yom Tovim, like Hanukkah, Purim, they're also in a time where the moon is shining. The only single Yom Tov that takes place in a time where the moon is hidden is Rosh Hashanah. And that's also how the Torah identifies Rosh Hashanah. If you remember, we have it in this booklet, and also talk about another aspect. Remember we said that one of the sources that Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment is a chapter in Tehillim. In the booklet, it's pretty much in the beginning. Yeah, page 12. You might recognize it because it's actually what we say in davening on Thursday. Last time I looked at the calendar, today is Thursday. So therefore, this is the chapter we say for today. You know, there's a question they ask is sometimes when you daven, your thoughts get distracted a little bit. They say there's one part of davening that's impossible to say it unless you're thinking about the meaning of the words. Otherwise, you can't say it. Which part is that? I'm not saying you're not allowed to say it. You can't actually say that part of davening unless you're focused. The Yom. Every day you're supposed to say, today's the 5th day of the week, and this is what the Levites said in the Beis Hamikdash. You can't say which day in the week it is unless you stop and think for a second. Other parts of davening, you can get lost in your thoughts, but not here. So this is the chapter we say today, page 12. It's page 12 in the booklet, where it says, Tikul b'chay the shofar, blow the shofar, when? Bakesa, when the new moon is hidden. So in other words, the fact that the new moon is hidden on Rosh Hashanah is a key factor. Why? Because spiritually that represents the idea that the sphere of Malchus actually returns to its source. Malchus is the source of life for the universe, goes back to its source, like a person who's sleeping, and then on Rosh Hashanah, the new light comes drawn down, and it's mainly through the blowing of the shofar, the special davening that we have, and the customs that we have, and so on. Okay, so now what he said, what I told you was that on a smaller scale, it's every week. There's even a smaller scale, and that's every day. That's the next page. But Proteus, in a very specific way, who came b'chol yom v'yom. Really, this takes place every day. Nimshachin meichen el yonim yeseh b'chol tefillah shachar. Every morning, there's a new light that shines, and that's in the morning after we were sleeping all night. And so we were sleeping, and in a sense, the universe is in a state of sleep. Everything goes up. And that which is revealed in the morning, it's not what went away that comes back, but something deeper. Normally you say, okay, the energy that I spent goes back to the source, and the next day it comes out more refreshed. It's not just it comes out more refreshed. Something deeper which wasn't here yesterday comes out more refreshed. The only thing is that on a daily basis, it's not totally new. It's already renewed on Shabbos. On a monthly basis, it's not totally new. It's already renewed on Rosh Chodesh. And on a yearly basis, that's when it's renewed for the whole year. That klal, but in general terms, with respect to the whole entire world, it's there's 6,000 years. This is of the world. Every Rosh Hashana, this is what happened. And this is what it means when it says Tamid Einei Vaylekecha Bo. The eyes of Hashem are always upon the land. Einayim, eyes, Heim Kinuyim. That is something which is used as a metaphor to describe Hamshachas v'ha'oras Erna Chochma, the light of and the radiance of Hashem's wisdom, Chochma. Shalachem Nikru Chachamim Eino Eila. That's why the wise people, the sages of the congregation, are called the eyes of the congregation. Like I told you, the Gemara says, and when it says in the Chumash, what if the eyes of the congregation did something wrong? It means the sages. Another source is Avira De'eretz Yisrael Machkim. The Gemara says the atmosphere of the land of Israel makes a person wise. Just living there, being in that atmosphere. Meaning because in Eretz Yisrael the light of Chochmah shines more openly, therefore a person who lives there and lives there in a proper way can absorb that light of Chochmah, and they will become wise. So remember the question in the beginning was, why does it say it's there from the beginning of the year to the end of the year? It should have said it's there constantly. So here he explains, this is the answer. This radiance and this light, even though it's constantly shining, it's not on the same level since the beginning of creation. It's a new light. The light that was shining one year Rosh Hashana, when the next year comes, on Erev Rosh Hashana, that light goes back to its original source. And that explains another thing. The words in the pasuk is Mereishis Hashana, from the beginning of the year to the end. The word Reishis is missing an aleph. It's spelled without an aleph in the Chumash. So the reason is because it's an indication that the light of Hashem that was there all year long is now missing. It's gone. It's hidden, and it goes back to its original source. And that's why it says Mereishis Chasar Aleph. Two more lines, and this is Remez. This alludes to the withdrawal of Hashem's light, that the light goes away on Erev Rosh Hashana. I just want to add, this is the same with every Yontif. One of the things we learned about, which I just mentioned before, is that every Yontif, in a sense, there's the reason why Yontif is what it is. It means that there's a light of Hashem that's shining in the world on Pesach, and there's a light of Hashem that's shining in the world on Purim, on Chanukah, and Sukkot. And that light is a source of spiritual sustenance. And when we follow the laws and the customs of that Yontif, we have the proper tools and the proper sort of channels through which that light would be channeled to us, and we can absorb it. But every Yontif, it's a different light, and it gives us chayus in a different area. So Pesach, through eating matzah, That gives us Amunah, faith in Hashem. Sukkot, we learn that Sukkot gives us unity. Shavuos gives us the power to study Torah and succeed in Torah study. A day like Simchas Torah gives us the power to be celebrating and joyful with the Torah. Purim is a day that gives us the power to be the Simcha altogether. And Chanukah is another thing. Why? Because that's what happened the first time, that on these days there was a godly light that was shining. And that was the reason why there was a miracle on those days, because the godly light was shining. So that godly light, which is an unusual light, and that's what caused the miracle then, that godly light shines every year on that day. So what the Alter Rebbe is saying is here, in reference to Rosh Hashana, really applies to everything. That when, let's say, Sukkot comes around and there's a godly light that shines, it's not the same from last year. The one from last year already went back up on Rosh Hashana. And now it's a new and deeper light that shines on Sukkot, on Purim, on Pesach. In a sense, the same as with every person. We know the Rebbe said that every person's birthday is like their own personal Rosh Hashanah, a birthday. And that's a special day. Our mazel is the strongest. So in a certain sense, that's what happens to us also. The light of Hashem that was drawn to give me sustenance personally, and that's my birthday. That's the day that I was created. I mean, Hashem on that day gave me life to be here in this world. So every year, on my birthday, that's what happens. The light that was given before returns back to its source. And for the new year, there's a new light that shines. And that, in order to benefit from new light, is by doing the customs of a birthday. Saying the extra kapitel Tilim, giving extra tzedakah, studying something extra in Torah, making a gathering and celebrating and thanking Hashem, making shechiyanu, all those customs. That's the purpose, because that becomes the channel through which we can absorb this new light. So again, the light is withdrawn ad achat kiyas until after the blowing of the shofar, and after the blowing of the shofar, Yerid Chodesh Elyon, the new light descends, a light shalahoyim meir adayin that never shined in this world me'olam er Elyon kazeh, such a light. So one of the things that Rebbe actually began talking this way mostly was in the recent years, is that every year has a name. A year, what's the name of the year? The name of the year is the number. For example, this year is 5,786, which in Hebrew would be Tov, Shin, Pei, Vav. That those letters of the alphabet, which is the number of the year, in a sense, it also contains in it the message that this carries the new light that's shining this year. And every year it's a different number. In other words, where do we see that every year is a different year? You see it in this. So for a time period starting from 1982, Tavshim Mem Beis, the Rebbe began to interpret what the number stands for. Started with Mem Beis, and then he said, this stands for Teishnas Bias Mashiach, and then Mem Gimel and Mem Dalet. Every year he said what it's an acronym for a certain message, which means this is something related to the whole year. Okay, so this new light that shines, Mislabish and Mistata Be'eretz HaChayim, it invests himself and it becomes hidden in the land of life, which is the attribute of Malchus of the spiritual realm, and also the land of life, which is down here, which is Eretz Yisrael. And of course, from Eretz Yisrael, it spreads to the whole world. The Hachi says Kol Eilumis, and this light gives life to all the worlds. Kol Meshach Shana Zu, throughout the entire year. How can I reveal that light? Which revealing the light would mean that we'd see the brachas and all the good things that the light brings. That depends on our actions and our merits and our tshuva. So that means every year there's a light that's drawn, that's a positive light. It's a godly light and it's a good light. But the only difference is that if we do the laws and customs, which is blowing shofar and everything else that needs to be done, that sets up the conduits that this light should be able to be revealed more in the world, which by definition means we'll see good and godly things happening in the world. So the message is not that when Rosh Hashana night comes, you should all go to sleep. This is only for people who do things according to Kabbalah. We should be up and awake. And anyway, even they didn't go to sleep, they slept briefly. There's actually a very beautiful story with Maggid the Mizrich. He also would fall asleep every Friday afternoons, close to Shabbos. So one time, he sent a message to the shul, and he said there's a student there, his name is Aaron of Karlin, and he had a custom that every Friday afternoon before Shabbos, he would recite the whole book of Shir HaShir, Song of Songs, to tell him to stop reciting the book of Shir HaShir, because what he's doing is creating such a commotion in heaven that I can't fall asleep, so he should stop. So the Chassidim would say, wow, the wow was not how amazing his Shir HaShirim is, but how amazing the Rebbe's sleeping must be. Here's a person saying Shir HaShirim. The Shir HaShirim is creating a commotion in the heavenly realm, and yet it's more important for the Rebbe to fall asleep than his Shir HaShirim. What does that mean? That means that when a tzaddik of that caliber goes to sleep, it's also not just sleep the way we know sleep. When we go to sleep, it's 7-8 hours of blank. By tzaddikim, it's a spiritual experience for them. You know, there are stories and there are stories, but there are stories that are printed in Torah books. So in the writings of the Arizal, there's a story printed there, and this, which is not so common, but this story is printed there, that the one who wrote all these writings is Arizal's most chosen student. His name was Reb Chaim Vital, was mentioned all over in Tanya. So he said that one Shabbos afternoon, his Rebbe, the Arizal, was sleeping, and he writes, it was Shabbos Parshas Balak, I think, and he saw his lips were moving, and he slept for about 2 hours, and then he asked him, what was it that his lips were moving? Obviously, he knew that something was going on. What was it? So he said he was experiencing things and seeing things. So he said to his Rebbe, could you share with me, which he did in many cases, share things with him. Could you share with me what you saw? So the Arizal said, if I would share with you what I saw, it would take me somewhere between 60 to 80 years. Mm-hmm. This is brought down in Chassidus to indicate, to show, and to prove that vision includes much more details than audio. In English, say a picture's worth 1,000 words, but it's much more than 1,000. You know, when you look at something, you can go on top of the Empire State Building and take a look at Manhattan. You just saw millions of details. You would have to list everything you saw: this building, these windows, these cars. It goes on and on and on. Spiritually, the same thing. What he saw in 2 hours, if you'd have to sort of go into the details, it would take me 60 to 80 years. But I'm focusing on a different point. That's what happens when he sleeps. So you see two people sleeping, one in this bed, one in that bed. One person sleeping, which is one of us, is blank. The other person sleeping, and it's like really it says about a Navi that when a prophet received a prophecy, they were actually unconscious. And in that state, they would see a vision, which was a spiritual experience.
Question?
Yeah.
So on Shabbos, during the day, many people just get so much more tired and have a hard time staying awake and fall asleep. And I'm wondering on a spiritual level if that has...
And also, especially Friday night.
Yeah.
I mean, I never saw it say that, but it sounds a little bit humorous, but that's the way a lot of people joke about it, that on Shabbos, all the energy of the world goes back to its source. The world is sleeping, so that's why people feel like falling asleep. It is interesting, there's actually, it says in Halacha that Shabbos is a time people should rest. In fact, I just want to say the acronym of the word Shabbos, it's spelled Shin, Beis, Sav. So there's an acronym that it stands for Shina B'Shabbos Tainum. Sleeping on Shabbos is pleasure. Second,
is there a correlation to get very, very tired Is there something spiritual in that? Because.
I think that's for a different reason.
Right, well, sometimes I've been learning for a long time, and then I get very, very tired always.
They tell the story that there was a caretaker taking care of an older rabbi. And she was talking to a friend of hers, and she said that she's also taking care of an older person. And she said he has a very hard time falling asleep. So he said, no worries. There's a book, my rabbi, when he starts reading that book, he falls asleep right away. I'll give you that book, so it'll help him fall asleep. So over there we say the reason is the Yetzer Hara doesn't want us to study Torah. So as soon as I start studying, it makes me tired to fall asleep. We have to fight it. Yeah.
Is there, maybe I made this up, but I heard that you're not really supposed to sleep on Shabbos because you're supposed to be like learning or like engaging in Shabbos. So
There is such a thing, right? That Shabbos is such a holy day, and every moment is so holy,
right.
and every moment is a moment that we can absorb and acquire so much more spirituality. I'm going to spend it in bed sleeping.
So we shouldn't sleep?
But again, there's the way it appears on the simple level that for people that they want to enjoy the Shabbos on a very physical level, it's eating good food and getting a nice good rest. I guess for those who want to go into things more on a spiritual level, but on the contrary, you try to stay up as much as you can Shabbos. Okay, to be continued. Hashem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
This is, I'm a little
The money.
confused. That's the
The money.
contribution. Yep, and the punch. Should I put money in there too? That were the letter. Okay.
The money should go to the.
Okay, and I didn't write my names on it. Am I supposed to write my name?
No, you don't have to. Let me just. You know what? You wrote here the two things, right?
I wrote-
Right. Yeah, write your name on the back of them.
And
Name and mother's name.
okay. And I'm leaving for Virginia today until the war.
Okay.
So I'm missing the, at your house. But have a sweet, happy New Year.
Okay, I'm gonna say to you, sweet happy year. It's the year with wonderful wedding. Over the prophet, this one's not with it.
And same one here. This is the pond.
So in the plan, you probably wrote your name.
Yes.
Yes, we don't have.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, have a nice, safe trip.
So.
Okay.
Thanks.